Well, I want to start with a story. Would you guys agree that one of the aspects of a healthy leader would be to have a positive attitude? How many would think that if your boss, your leader, or if you yourself had a positive attitude, that would be effective, right? So I want to tell you a story about a gentleman that, one of those people that we just love to be around. How many here are been around people that just kind of give you energy, and it's like, oh, I just love being around that person because they give and feed us energy? Okay, we all know someone like that. Well, the story I want to tell you today is about a guy like that. Now, this guy was one of those positive people that lost his job. And unfortunately, due to cutbacks, he went to work and they said, hey, we have to lay you off because there's not enough work. But he didn't go home and say, oh, poor me, I don't have a job, what am I going to do? What he decided was, I'm going to go home, I'm going to find a new job. This is a great opportunity to find a new career where I can use the gifts, talents, and abilities that God's given me. And so every day he would look in the newspaper, look online, and look for a job. And one day he's looking in the newspaper and he sees that in the newspaper that the local zoo is hiring. So he's like, cool, I'd love to work at a zoo. So he gets in his car and he drives down to the zoo and says, I want your job. And they're like, well, you don't even know what the job is yet. Why don't we tell you what the job is first, and then you can decide whether you want the job or not, because it does look like you'd be perfect for the job. And so the zoo said that recently their gorilla had died, and then it was going to cost $500,000 for a new gorilla, and they didn't have $500,000 for the gorilla. But they did figure, hey, you know what, the cage is pretty far back, and that if we put a man in a gorilla suit, I think we can get away with it, and that's the job, is you're going to be the zoo's gorilla. He's like, absolutely, I'll be the best gorilla you've ever seen. And so he gets the job. And so, hey, how many here have been to the zoo before? And what are the animals typically doing? The lions, they're lying around. Giraffes just standing. They're not doing much, right? But when people got to this gorilla cage, they were super excited. He's running around. He's beating his chest. He's swinging from tree to tree. And so every day he had a big crowd of people coming to see him. And so being the high energy guy that he was, he wanted to see, well, how many people, perfect, there's a great seat for you right here. So how many people can I get to come and watch me as the zoo's gorilla? So he decides that when he's swinging from tree to tree, that's when they really show up. So he starts swinging from tree to tree, and people are coming, the crowd's getting big, and he's getting super excited because he's got this big crowd of people to watch him, and he's swinging himself higher and higher, but he gets himself a little too excited. And he swings himself so high that he swings out of his cage and he lands in the lion's cage. And so he sees that, and so he starts running and he's yelling, help me, somebody, please help me. But no one knows what's going on because gorillas aren't supposed to be able to talk. And he's running away from this lion, and this lion's chasing him. He's yelling, help me, somebody, please help me. But the lion's faster than he is, and the lion's chasing him. And the lion jumps right on top of him and says, shut up, or we're both going to lose our jobs. So I tell that story for two reasons, okay? How important is it to have a positive attitude as a leader? I think it's absolutely important to be a positive leader, but I also think it's important to have laughter. So I do want to have some fun as we go through today, but you're here today because we're going to talk about the one thing. The one thing that if you do this thing in your health, it's going to transform your life, okay? Now, I'm sure we've all been to the mall and talked to someone in the kiosk that said, oh yeah, you buy this thing, this will transform you. This is the one thing. Or we've all seen the infomercial that says, you know, you do this, this is the one thing, that if you do this, this is going to transform your life, okay? So you might be thinking, I don't know if I believe that there's just one thing for my health that could transform my life. And so we could just look at the different aspects of health and see, wow, well, there's physical health, there's relational health, there's financial health, there's spiritual health, there's self-help, there's self-health when it comes to our mental and our emotional health. And so just this alone, how could there be one thing that could help someone transfer life, just that one thing? And then we look at, if we break them down, we look into physical health, we can see, okay, there's hundreds of things that you could do physically for your health. So how could there be one thing? So one of the things I want to talk about then when it comes to physical health is your brain. Your brain controls everything. Your brain is super important. We've all heard that if you don't use it, you lose it. We've heard that if you kill off these brain cells, they don't regrow. We've heard that if your brain isn't working, then the rest of your body can't work. Okay, we've all seen it. We've seen people paralyzed. We've seen people quadriplegics. We've seen it. So brain is important. Now, how many here know that your brain is made up of mostly fat? 60% of your brain is made up of fat. So if I want a healthy brain, what is one of the things that I should probably eat? If my brain is made up of 60% fat, what do I need to eat? Fat. Absolutely. So what were we told in the 80s and 90s, though, to do with fat? Stop eating it. In fact, do you guys remember that food pyramid that they created? They put fat at the very top in the same category as sugar and said, only eat it sparingly. And what happened to Americans? They got fat. It's really weird, right? We stopped eating fat and we got fat. And so eating healthy fats is important. So give me some examples of what some healthy fats that we could eat that would allow for our brain to be healthier. Give me some examples.
Bacon, avocado.
Avocado. Who said bacon? Because it depends, right? It depends what that pig ate. So actually, animal fat can be healthy, but it depends on what the animal's eating. Grass-fed, free-range animals are going to have healthy fats. Animals that are fed in feedlots, fed a bunch of corn, and whatever else they're feeding them are not going to be healthy fats. So you said avocados, bacon actually can. I wouldn't agree. So fish oil. I wouldn't recommend the bacon diet, though. I'd say that once in a while it's good. Fish oils. Yep, fish has healthy fats. So healthy, we all have heard that fish is brain food, right? So we know that if we eat healthy fat, it's good for us. How many here have heard of the ketogenic diet? So the ketogenic diet is a diet that's saying you need to eat 70 to 90% of your calories from fat. And where they're pulling that from is they showed research that kids that had epilepsy that ate that way no longer had seizures. And they found that people that had dementia, as they started to eat 70, 90% fat, they could actually reverse their dementia. Now, I would say that 70 to 90% of your calories from fat is probably too much. But I would say 30 to 50% of our calories from fat is really what we all need to eat.
What's the name of that diet?
So it's called a keto, ketogenic diet, okay, or the keto diet. So you'll see it. It's kind of, a lot of people call it the fad diet because I do believe, again, we've jumped on it like the Atkins diet, and it became the bacon diet, right? And so I would say it's healthy, but it's also the way we should have been eating for many years. So butter, is butter good for us or not?
Yes.
Well, it depends where that butter comes from. If that butter comes from an animal that's being fed in a feedlot, it's probably not going to have the healthier fats than if that animal is free range. Okay, so we know that the brain is one of the most important parts of our body. It controls everything, so it's got to be the one thing, right? Well, I would say it's important, hugely important, but I would say it's not the one thing. So what about our heart? Our heart, we know that the #1 cause of death in America is heart disease. Okay, so if we look at the heart, then the heart's got to be one of the most important things in our health. And if we take care of our heart, it's going to be life transforming. What does the heart do? It pumps blood, pumps oxygen to every part of our body. It pumps the nutrients to every part of our body, gets rid of the waste products. So the heart is super important. And we've probably all heard that if you eat cholesterol, it can clog your arteries. You've all seen the commercial on TV. It's kind of like a traffic jam, all this cholesterol clogging your arteries. But how many here have heard of homocysteine? Okay, so homocysteine, research after research study shows that people that have elevated homocysteine levels are at an increased risk of heart disease, and the predictability of heart attacks and heart disease based off of homocysteine is much better than cholesterol. But most of you have probably heard that you should go get your cholesterol checked, but nobody here even heard of the term homocysteine. And you can get that test. You can ask your doctor to do that test, and they'll add it onto your, onto your test, no problem, but nobody knows that they should. High homocysteine is actually, when we did pathology in our school, they taught us that the first process of heart disease is damage to an artery. Homocysteine is what causes damage to an artery. Cholesterol comes actually to heal that artery. It can get oxidized and a plaque forms. So cholesterol is actually part of the healing process. Homocysteine is actually part of the damaging process. So what raises someone's homocysteine levels, do you think? Eating high amounts of processed grains. And what were we told in the 80s and 90s to eat lots of? Grains, right? 6 to 11 servings every day. So we had to figure ways like, oh, I got to eat toast, I got to eat cereal, I got to eat pasta, I got to eat all these grains, and actually they were causing us to develop heart disease. And you saw it, all you have to do is look at the statistics. Heart disease skyrocketed once that food pyramid came out. And so we can see that heart is a major part of our health. The heart is a really vital organ. We need to have it healthy. And so it must be the one thing. It must be the thing that if we have good heart health, then that's the one thing. And it's important, but I would say it's actually not the one thing that would transform your life. How about your digestive system then? How important is your digestive system? Well, our digestive system is what we use to break down the food that we eat, get the nutrients into our body so our body can get building blocks, regenerate itself. And so our digestive system must be healthy in order just to do so. And so when we look at Americans, we're seeing digestive health being one of the most significant health issues now. We're hearing people with IBS, celiac, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis. And so we can see that the digestive system is important. A lot of times what people think is when I take food into my mouth and I start chewing on it and I swallow it and it gets into my stomach, they think it's inside my body now. Well, I tell you, it's actually outside your body still. The way your digestive system is your digestive system is like a filter system. It's like your skin. You know, your skin protects you from things from the outside world, but it lets some things in. Well, that's the way your digestive system works, is that you take that food, you break it down small enough that it actually can cross over that membrane. And once it crosses over into your body, now it's inside of you. But how many here have heard of leaky gut syndrome? So a few of you have. Okay, so leaky gut syndrome is actually where you get some damage to that digestive system. What happens is you can get these little micro holes, and now what happens is when you break down food, that food doesn't get broken down into the small parts. It actually stays as large proteins, crosses over into your body, and guess what happens? Your immune system says, I've never seen this before, I'm going to attack it. And the problem is that protein looks just like parts of your body, and you develop a disease called autoimmunity. Now your body starts attacking yourself. Why would my body attack itself? Well, it could be because I've got a leaky gut. And what causes a leaky gut in a lot of people is actually a big one is gluten. So we've all heard, oh, is this a gluten fad or whatever? Research shows 100% of the people that eat gluten have damage to their intestinal wall. Okay? Well, the reason why we don't all develop problems is some of us are really good at healing that quickly. Some of us, not so good. People with celiac, it doesn't heal at all. And so what happens is now they open up the digestive system to allow things in that shouldn't. So now you got large proteins, but what else do you have in your gut? Well, you have bacteria, you have parasites, so these things can get into your blood vessels and now they can circulate around your body. And you can have infections, which also can cause heart disease. You can get parasites. We had a patient that actually got parasites in his brain, started developing all kinds of neurologic problems because of it. And so you can start to see that if your digestive system is compromised, now you can have an unhealthy body. So this must be the thing, figuring out how to deal with leaky gut and not get it. That must be the one thing that would allow you to be healthy. And it is important, but it's not the one thing I'm going to talk about today. How about bone health? How important is bone health? What builds the bone strong? Come on, you guys have all... Strength training. So, but if you were to ask people 10 years ago, what do you think they would say? Milk. We were all told milk, it does the body good, okay? So thinking that milk makes bones strong is like thinking I can just sit in that chair all day long, watch TV, eat steak all day long, and I'll have big, strong muscles. You know, you have to stress it out first. So weight-bearing exercise, exactly. And is milk the only way we can get calcium? Why is it that milk is the only thing that they promote for getting strong bones? What else could you get calcium from? Broccoli, absolutely. So a serving of broccoli, a serving of spinach, they have about the same amount of calcium as a glass of milk. Swiss chard has about twice as much calcium as a glass of milk. And if you really want to get bang for your buck, eat sardines. 3.5 times more servings of calcium than milk. How many here are going to run and go get their sardines now? If you told your kid, hey, we're going to get you 5 servings of sardines today, they'd be like, no thanks. So why is it sardines are so high in calcium? Is because you eat the whole fish. You eat the bones and everything. Okay? But we don't have to get it just for milk. In fact, research shows that in the United States, we drink more milk than any other country in the world, and we have the second highest rate of osteoporosis. So if milk was the solution, we should be like we should be golden, but we're not. And the reason why bone health is important is what happens when you develop osteoporosis. What happens to your bones is you can break them. And if you break your hip, what happens to you? You fall, right? And if you fall, research shows as we age, as we fall, where do you end up most of the time? In a nursing home. And after a fall, research shows that most people die within 1 year of that fall. So how important is it to have bone health? Very important. But we tend to think of it, I just got to drink my milk. No, you got to stress those bones. Now there's other reasons why someone would have osteoporosis. But again, bone health, really important. But is it the one thing? It is important, but it's not the one thing. So how about our muscles? Our muscles must be the one thing then. Taking care of our body through exercising. But it's not just the muscles in our legs and our arms. Is the heart a muscle? Absolutely. Is our digestive system a muscle? Absolutely. So it's really important that we think of it like that. But when you think of muscles, I'm going to talk a bit about just those muscles that are in our arms and legs and such. But what happens is most of us think about, well, I got to build big, strong muscles. I mean, how many here have heard the term functional movement, though? So one of us. So functional movement is thinking about doing things that you would do every day. Because when I was in the 80s, I started lifting weights. And I remember one of the things that they said was, when you do a squat, don't ever squat past 90, because that'll be bad for your knees. And then when you go to the gym, don't ever twist while you move. Everything's got to be very strict. But then when I left, and I had kids, and I had to get my kids out of the back of the car, I had to reach, and I had to grab my kid. Okay, it like didn't make sense. So functional movement says, you know what? You do need to strengthen in that plane. When you do a squat, when I go to pick something up, I do need to be able to do a squat. Okay, so functional movement says we're actually going to teach you how to be strong in everyday life rather than just building big, strong muscles that you're never going to be able to use. So you guys have probably been sitting now for about 20 minutes. So you've been sitting too long. So I need you guys to stand up. Okay, so I'm going to show you. How many have a job where they sit for a living? Any? Yeah, so a few of you. When you sit for a living, do you find that at the end of the day you might end up kind of sitting like this? Kind of slouched over, heads like this. Maybe you have a sit-stand station, which is definitely better. But if you sit like this for a long period of time, what happens is you get all tight and hunched over, you get flexor dominant. So what I want to do is show you something that you can do to combat that, and you can do it throughout the day. So we call them YWTL. So I want you to reach up to the sky like you're actually trying to put your fingers through the ceiling. And what this is we're trying to work on reciprocal inhibition. You don't have to remember that word, but if I want to bend this arm, I fire this muscle, I shut this muscle off, okay? If I want these muscles to quit pulling me like that, I'm going to fire the opposite muscles, okay? So this is the Y part of it. 10 to 15 seconds in this position. Then you're going to come down into a W and see how I squeeze back and then down, okay? So I want you to, again, hold it here. Some of it might feel really good. Some of you might be like, oh, this is kind of hurting a little bit, but it's kind of a hurt so good too, right? So 10 to 15 seconds in this position. You want to be nice and relaxed in the kind of your head and stuff, so you don't want to be like this. Just breathing. It's a good time to do some deep breathing, can be helpful too. So hold it like this. Then you're going to have to kind of maneuver yourself so you don't hit somebody, because you're going to open up, and this is the T part, okay? And not only are you going to open up your arms like this, roll your thumbs so they're back, and you're really going to feel in the back of your shoulder. How many here can feel that? So these are muscles that you don't fire very often. And so you're going to squeeze like that, again, pulling back and then pulling down 10 to 15 seconds in this position. Then you're going to come out like this, put your arms like this, kind of thumbs out like that, and then just, again, 10 to 15 seconds in this position. And what you're going to find is that you do this, you're going to find that these muscles start to relax. And then when you go ahead and sit back down again, go ahead and sit down. It's going to be super easy to just sit in good posture. You won't feel like this, but you're going to have to do that multiple times throughout the day. And it works really well. What I have found, though, is that when people are dealing with an issue, they do something, like do those kind of things, and then when they feel better, they just stop doing it. And then they come back into the office like, oh, I'm getting sore in here, and then remind them, oh, what about that exercise? Oh, yeah, I stopped doing that exercise. So really important. Another thing you could do, is super helpful, that forward head posture that we can get. When you're driving to work and when you're driving home from work, what I want you to do is just tuck your chin like this, squeeze back like that against the headrest of your car. 15 to 20 seconds. Do that 2-3 times on the way to work, 2-3 times on the way home. Strengthens your neck, gets these muscles stretched out. So a really good tool for helping. So functional movement is really important. Again, is it the one thing that I want to talk about today that I think that can transform your life? I think it's important, but I don't think it's the one thing. So how about sleep? How important is sleep? We've been told you need 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. How many here do get 6 to 8 hours of good quality sleep? Yep. So how many here are finding that they're waking up in the middle of the night? Maybe it's the same time every night. Maybe it's 1 or 2 in the morning, and they can't figure out, not only am I awake, I'm awake and I'm wide awake. And I can't figure out, like, it feels like it's morning time. There's some different reasons why that could be. Sometimes it can be because of a blood sugar control issue. So if your blood sugar drops too low and you're not very good at managing your blood sugar, your body will release cortisol. Cortisol is the wake-up hormone. So now you're wide awake, you can't figure out why. And so one of the things that you can do for that, I would suggest, is you got to burn that cortisol off. And so just lying in bed, tossing and turning is not going to do it. Thinking about all the work you got to do is not going to do it. I would suggest this is a good time to read a book, because that will burn cortisol off fast. But I would suggest is that you have good sleep hygiene so you're not waking up in the middle of the night. So having good blood sugar control. Do you know a diet that can help with good blood sugar control? It's called the ketogenic diet. So we can see that adding fat to our diet can actually help us control our blood sugar. So really important. Hormones can also cause us to have problems with waking up in the middle of the night. So good hormone control. What do we make hormones out of? Do you guys know? It comes in a diet called the ketogenic diet, and it's called fat. Yep. Cholesterol. Restricting your cholesterol. Cholesterol is the backbone of all your sex and stress hormones. So actually eating cholesterol is going to help you to make those hormones. And so good sleep hygiene, I say it starts in the morning. Kind of like some people say that love making starts in the kitchen. I would say good sleep hygiene starts in the morning. A lot of people ask us about, oh, what could I do right before I go to bed that would help me sleep better? Should I take melatonin? And that can be definitely helpful, but I would say this is start your morning where you can jack up your cortisol when you first get up, and one thing to do is to do some exercise. And it could be as simple as like 4 to 8 minutes of just doing some jumping jacks, burpees, push-ups, something that would get your heart rate up and get your cortisol, because as that cortisol is high in the morning, then as the day goes on, it starts to decrease. And then you're ready for sleep. Your body just says, oh, it's time to go to bed. The other thing is, what do you do at nighttime? You start doing work right before bed, I promise you, you're not going to sleep well. What about reading the news or reading something that's thrilling? That's not going to be good either. What about looking at your phone or spending time on your iPad? So have you guys heard of blue light? Blue light stimulates you. Okay, so you can get these glasses that are called blue blockers, kind of like the ones we saw in the 80s and 90s, great big glasses that the old people had. It's kind of like that. It blocks the blue light. But I would suggest stay off of that. I would rather see you read something that would help you to fall asleep if you're having a hard time falling asleep. So good sleep hygiene is huge for our health, because when we sleep, that's when we heal our bodies. If we can't sleep, we can't heal. And so it's important, but again, it's not the one thing. So what about our discs and hydration? How important is it to have hydration? How much water should we drink in a day?
8 glasses.
8 glasses. So we've all heard of 8-ounce glasses, or half your body weight in ounces. And some people would say, well, that's going to put me in the bathroom all day long. And so one of the things I would say is you need to not just drink that water. It gets into your body, but it needs to get into your cells. And a healthy cell has a healthy membrane around it. And what do you need to eat to get a healthy membrane around your cell? It's a common theme. Fat again, yep. Ketogenic diet. So again, I'm not here to promote the ketogenic diet, because I think everybody has everybody's unique and different, and there's different ways to eat. But I think that probably everybody needs to be eating about 30 to 50% of their calories from fats, and then how we eat differently is going to depend on how your makeup is. But it's really important that we eat good healthy fats, because it does help with absorption of water. And so we should be eating or drinking maybe 6 to 8 glasses a day. We should be half our body weight in ounces. But what about the discs in our spine? Do you guys know what they look like? If you don't know, you can stop by our booth. We have a model of a spine. You can take a look. But the only way that they get nutrients, our discs, is through movement, because they have no direct blood supply. It actually goes through the bones. So if we sit all day long and we have this compression and then we don't drink, what can happen is those discs can become unhealthy, they become dehydrated, and they tear and they crack. And what is the number one health issue in America when it comes to pain? It's back pain. Okay? Number one reason for lost days at work? Back pain. And so if we have back pain, it can be very well because we're just not drinking enough and we're not moving our bodies enough. And so really important that we get water. Our bodies are made up of about 70% water, so it's important to get that water. But is it the one thing that I'm talking about today? Again, it's important, but it's not the one thing. How about our hormones? How important is it that we have healthy hormones? Well, we've talked a little bit about hormones. We talked about if you're releasing cortisol when you're not supposed to, that's going to cause you to not be able to sleep. If we're dealing with large amounts of stress, we'll have lots of cortisol. So when we're being chased by a bear, it's good to have high blood pressure. It's good to have a fast heart rate. It's good to have high blood sugar. It's good to have all those things when we're being chased by a bear. Is it good to have those things in your body when you're not being chased by a bear? No, but most Americans are dealing with that constantly because they feel like they're being chased by a bear because they're stressed all day long. So one of the ways that you're going to deal with healthy hormones is you're going to deal with your stress. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, another thing is you got to have a good, healthy, functioning liver, and we're going to talk about that in a second here. But your hormones, having proper hormone control from our sex hormones to our adrenal hormones to our metabolic hormones like thyroid hormone is really important. So again, really important, but not the one thing. How are you doing? You look very cold. We need a blanket for you or something. I apologize that this room's so cold. I'm not sure why exactly it is. So how about the liver? So how important is the liver? Why'd they call it the liver, do you think? Because it helps you to live. Yeah, so it does help you to filter, but it helps us to live. So it's important that we realize that a fatty liver can cause all kinds of health problems. So what can cause a fatty liver? Most of us know about people dealing with drinking too much alcohol and causing us to have a fatty liver. But we're seeing more people today than ever before having fatty livers that don't even drink. So what would cause their liver to get fat? They don't even drink alcohol. Again, the research shows that when you eat too many carbohydrates, especially processed grains, what do you do with those carbohydrates? Because you don't store them like most people would think in your body as sugar. How do you store them? You store them as fat. And the first place you start storing them is in your liver. And then that liver, when we get exposed to toxins, starts storing those toxins in that fat. So it's not circulating and floating around our body. So now we've got a fatty liver because we're eating too many grains, too many carbohydrates getting converted to fat, and we're getting exposed to too many toxins. Where are some of the places we get exposed to a lot of toxins, do you guys think? Yeah, so our water bottles. So they say, well, we're going to get rid of the BPA, and then they replaced it. But does anyone know what they replaced it with? Is it better for you than BPA? Research shows that it's not, but we don't seem to care because they replaced it. So what else? Where else can we get exposed to toxins? How about if we're eating food that's got sprayed with chemicals, herbicides and pesticides? What about Roundup? Monsanto just lost their first lawsuit, I think, ever, and you're going to see it happen more and more because people are seeing major health issues become because of glyphosate, which is what Roundup is. And so we're seeing these things causing major problems, cancers and such, because we're getting exposed to toxins. Where else could you get exposed to toxins? How about inside? What about the carpet we put in our homes? What about the walls we build? What about the building materials that, or the clothes we wear? How about if we're using dryer sheets and we're wearing that stuff all day long or getting dry cleaning? All those things have toxins in it that could potentially cause us to have problems. And our liver's job is to get rid of them. And one way you'll know if you don't have a very good functioning liver is your skin starts to become a problem, because the next place is you start getting it rid out of your skin. So you see all these people with eczema and stuff, it's probably a sign that their liver's not functioning very well. But the liver is really important to take care of because it helps get rid of toxins. So again, liver is important, but is it the one thing that I wanted to talk to you about that I think can transform your life? Again, really important, but not the one thing. So if it's not physical health, then it must be mental health, because mental health, we know that depression, anxiety runs rampant in this country, and we know that it's impacting Americans in a really significant negative way. So if we take care of our mental health, and I do believe we need to, and I believe there's a lot of different ways, from the nutrition we eat to the stress levels we have, it's really important. But what about rest? There's a book called The Forgotten Commandment. I don't know if anyone's ever read it. So we got these 10 commandments, and most of us would be happy to say, well, I don't murder people, I don't lie, I don't steal. I'm pretty good with the 10 commandments, but when it comes to the Sabbath, most of us are actually wearing it kind of as a badge of honor that I work 7 days a week. I don't ever stop working. In fact, I've worked all weekend long. I had a deadline to get to. I'm just working. We're actually almost proud of it. But yet, in the Bible, it talks about that the Sabbath was actually created for man, not for God. What it means by that is, for us to rest our bodies is actually in our creation, that we need that rest. And if you look at, how many here have read the Blue Zones? So one of us. So when we look at the Blue Zones, it's looking at people that were living to be 100 years old and thriving at 100 years old. Now, I always ask people, how many here would like to live to be 100? And very few people ever raise their hand, because they see what a 100-year-old looks like, and they think, I don't want to live like that. But what about a 100-year-old that's thriving? I think most of us would like that. And so what the research showed was, when they looked at those cultures that people were living to be 100 years old and thriving, they all took a day of rest. And so a day of rest is critical for our mental health, but most of us aren't taking it. And so again, is this the one thing? Super important to have mental health, but I don't believe it's the one thing that I wanted to talk about today. So it must be relational health. How important is it to have good relationships? Well, we know that when people are isolated and all alone, they lose their mental health, they lose their physical health. So being all alone is not a good thing. We were created to be in commune. We were created to be with people. And so it's really important that we have good relationships, from the relationships that we have with our loved one or our spouse, or the relationship that we have with our family members, or with our coworkers. You were just talking, Susie, about people that are having jobs now where they don't go into work, and so they're just working with a computer all day long. That is not a healthy thing for us. And so we need to have good relational health. How about multi-generational? Have you heard of that before? So what we're seeing now is we're actually seeing that them taking child care, daycare centers, and putting them in nursing homes, because they see that, hey, we put these two together, they both thrive. They do well. And so it's really important that we have that. In fact, again, when you looked at the Blue Zones, one of the things that they said that was common across those cultures is those cultures, they all work together in multiple generations. So you got the grandparents taking care of the grandkids, or you got the parents having having their parents live with them, instead of how we see it in our culture. And so really important that we have good relationships, that we have good relational health. Again, is this the one thing, though? It's not. It's actually really important to have it, but it's not the one thing. So it must be spiritual health. We know that we're not just a one-part body, right? We're not just a physical body. We're a physical, we're a mental, emotional, and we're a spiritual being. So we're all three parts. And so a lot of times, though, we're pretty good at taking care of, like, exercise. If I ask someone, what do you got to do to be healthy? Most people would say you got to diet and exercise. Good diet and good exercise. We know very few people think of the spiritual aspect. But what is it? What does come with spiritual health? Well, prayer, in communication with your Creator, living a life of purpose. You're not just here by chance. You're not just here because something happened and all of a sudden you're here. You're here because you have some gifts, talents, and abilities that the world needs, and that's why you're here. Having purpose will allow you to thrive in this world. Or what about serving others? Research shows that people that are dealing with depression and anxiety, when they get them helping other people, they start thinking about other people, stop thinking about themselves, and all of a sudden they're cured of their depression or anxiety. Not in all cases, but it does happen. How about freedom? Just the freedom to know that we have a God that loves us and forgives us. That comes with major freedom. We don't have to live in guilt and fear. But what about forgiveness? Research shows that people that harbor unforgiveness or bitterness to others, what happens is depression and anxiety runs rampant in their lives. So having forgiveness, understanding that you're forgiven, and also forgiving others is huge. So how can you forgive? I think the first thing is to realize that many of the times that you're mad at the person that did something to you, we can also do that to other people. A lot of times we'll do things. We cut someone off on the drive to work, and we realize, oh, I hope they realize I'm in a hurry. But then someone cuts us off, and we're like, oh, we get mad at them. We got to realize that we do some of the same things. And we're just humans, they're just humans. Maybe they're on their way because on their way to the hospital. You don't know. But what you need to do is practice forgiveness, because forgiveness is what allows for healing in our bodies and allows our bodies to be healthy. So spiritual health, is spiritual health an absolute important part of our health? Absolutely. Is it the one thing, though, that I wanted to talk about? Is it the one thing that if you do that, just one thing, it'll transform your life? I'm going to say that there's actually something I think that's even more important. So how about financial health then? Financial health, it's got to be important, right? It's got to, having bad debt, having debt way over your head, that can't be good for you, right? So we know that when we have good financial health, that we're healthier. So having debt where we're having to pay to collection agencies or whatever, we know that in the Bible it says that the borrower is slave to the lender. And so really important that we look at that debt is a bad thing, at least bad debt, I should say. Savings, having savings is important. How about coveting? Looking at your neighbor's house and saying, man, I need a bigger house. Or I remember we lived in a house in St. Louis Park just across the street here. It was a 700 square foot house. Thinking, man, we need a bigger house. We had 3 kids. We need a bigger house. And I remember talking to the lady that lived beside us, and she said, well, I've lived here all my life, and I've seen a lot of people come and go. And there was a family in here. They had 6 kids that lived in that house. And I thought, wow. And so then I remember moving to a 2,000 square foot house and thinking, man, I live in a mansion. And then you start to go visit someone that's got a 3,000 square foot house. And like, oh, this is kind of nice. And then you move into that, and you keep moving. And then all of a sudden, I guess I got to live in a castle to be happy. And we really realize that happiness doesn't come from the size of our house. It comes from other aspects in our house. Well, how about profits? How important is profits? We know that revenue is important. But what if my revenue is $1 million and my expenses is $1.2 million? Do I have a good business? No. Do I have a good household if I'm living that way? No. So how many here have read this book, Profit First? Has anyone read this book? So again, one. So Profit First says the way to figure out a good business or a good household is to look at what is our income or our revenue, and then rather than what most businesses do, well, let's take our expenses and we'll see what we're going to have for profits at the end. They say, no, I'm going to figure out what I want for profits, so I'll take my revenue or income minus my profits, and that's going to equal my expenses. So it's a different way of looking at it, isn't it? But it's a much healthier way of looking at it, because now you don't just spend everything you make. You actually look at and say, no, our expenses can only be this much because we want this much in profit. So again, is financial health, though, the one thing? Is it the one thing that would transform your life? I think it's a really important part of your health, but I don't think it's the one thing. So what's left then? Haven't we kind of gone through it all? One thing I want to ask you first, though, before I get to that one thing, is how many here are either business leaders or have employees that that work under them, or maybe you're just an employee at your company? All of us, right? So what happens to you if your health and you can't go to work? What happens to your business? What happens to your business if that key employee can't get to work? What happens to you if you can't go to work and you're the person that makes the money in the household? What happens is your business gets affected, your household gets affected. So it's really important to have healthy leaders. It's really important to have healthy employees. It's really important to be healthy yourself. So one of the things that we do in our office is I believe that so strongly that what we do is we go to companies like yourselves and we do talks to teach people about health. Because I believe everything I talked about so far is super important for your health. And I believe that if I can teach people how to take better care of their brain, how to take better care of their heart or their digestive system, then I can help that company to be more successful. And so we come in and we do corporate talks. And so I don't have one of those brochures, but if you have one, you'll see it's like, yep, right there. So if you see that, on that is what we do. We do healthy talks, and we talk about pretty much anything that you want us to talk about, because maybe you have employees in your company that are all dealing with, they're constantly getting sick all the time. So we come in and teach them how to take care of their immune system. Or maybe there is kind of a rampant amount of heart disease, or maybe they're worried about, hey, I got family members dealing with dementia. How do I not get that? We come in and we talk, and we don't charge for that. We come into your company, your organization, and we do it at no cost to you. And so we come in, help you to have healthy employees, help you to be a healthy leader, help you to be a healthy employee. So if you want to learn more about that, we do have a booth here today. We are sponsoring this event. And one of the reasons we're part of this event is because, as Rob said, we need holistic leaders, leaders that are healthy, not just in making good profits, making good revenue, but are healthy overall, good relationships. So what is left then? Before I get to that one thing, I want to ask you guys a question. Why do you think people want to be healthy? What are some of the reasons that people want to be healthy? What do you guys think?
It changes the quality of your life.
Quality of life, absolutely. What other reasons?
Be happy.
Happy, yep. So you feel better, right? What else? How about
Joyful.
joyful? Absolutely, yep, absolutely. What else? How about longevity? Could you potentially live longer? Or maybe you don't live longer, but live better during those years? How about energy? Who would like to have more energy? I think most of us would say yes to that. So we want to feel better. How about looking better? Now, it may seem vain, but I think we'd all like to look better. We do look better when we feel better, right? So we want to look better, feel better, live longer, have better quality of life. So the next question I have to ask you is why? Why would you want to look better, feel better, have more joy? Why would you want to have better quality of life? Give me some reasons.
I think it deepens your relationships with other people.
Yeah, so you can have better relationships. Absolutely. Because having just that feeling like, hey, I just want to feel better or look better is good and everything, but I don't think that's the reason why. I think there's a bigger reason why you want to feel better. Why do you want to have more energy? Maybe it's so that when I come home at night, I can play with my kids. Maybe I'm thinking outward and I'm thinking, you know what, I don't have grandkids yet, but I'd sure love to be that grandpa that can get on the floor and play with my grandkids. The reason I bring this up is because if your why is not big enough, if your why is just to look better, feel better, live longer, it's not big enough. What happens is other things get in the way. What happens is you start, well, I guess I got to get that deadline. I can't work out today because I've got too many other things on my plate. You will not make it a priority. When your why is not big enough, what will happen is you'll put other things ahead of it. And so when your why is bigger, what happens is your spiritual health will grow. You'll actually live out. You won't just have spiritual health. You'll live out what you're learning. You won't just, like what Rob was saying, you'll actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk. When you're called on a missions trip to go to Africa, but because you don't have good enough health, you're going to be sad. But if you take care of yourself, you're going to be happy. You're going to have that joy. You're going to have that peace. When you're called as a 42-year-old man, as Rob was, to adopt a little girl, guess what? You're going to think, I'm going to do this. How many people at 42 years old really want to adopt a baby because they think, I'm not going to have good enough health when I'm 50 years old to even get down and play with that kid. And so that, until your why is big enough, what happens is you put too many other things in front of you. So I think that the most important thing when it comes to health is having a big enough why. And so what you need to do, so as Rob asked you guys to do today, is take the time to think about, as you leave today, what did I take from that message? What did I take from that guy that spoke on healthy leadership? What did I take and what can I do and apply that in my life? This is what I would say, is figure out the reasons why you'd want to be healthy. Not just the superficial reasons, dig deep And if you have to, put them on the fridge, put them in on your iPad, your phone, use it as your screensaver, whatever it takes to constantly remind me this is the reason why I'm going to the gym at 5 in the morning when it's dark outside and it's minus 30 degrees. Because I promise you there's nothing that feeling good or looking good will make you get out of bed for when it's 30 degrees and it's dark outside, when it's minus 30. You've got to have something bigger. And what I really want to leave you with today is I hope that this wasn't just informational. Pretty much everything I talked about up until this point has been something, if you were to dig deep enough, you could have went and found on the internet. Okay? We live in an easy access to information. You could have found that information that I just talked about your brain, your heart, and such. You could have found that information by spending time on the internet. But what I want it to be is transformational. What's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? One word. Application, absolutely. So you can know a lot. We can know that we should take care of our health. We can know. How many people here would say that there's not enough health clubs in Minneapolis? None of them. How many here would say we just don't have enough health food stores in Minneapolis? How many here would say that we just don't have enough doctors here in this country? That's why our country is so sick. It's got nothing to do with that. This whole campaigns about we need to have a fix to this healthcare crisis. The healthcare crisis is Americans won't take care of themselves. And the reason they won't take care of themselves is they don't have a big enough why. When we have a big enough why, it'll overcome those things and it'll be transformational, not just informational. So we have a booth over at the back of the room if you guys want to come talk to us. I'll be here for a few minutes if you guys want to have any questions that you have. Really appreciate you guys being at the talk today, and I hope you have a great rest of the seminar. Thank you.